To the United States, where an investigation has been launched after a passenger jet collided with a U.S. military helicopter while landing in Washington, D.C. Rescuers have begun to search the River Potomac nearby for survivors. 67 people were on board the two aircraft at the time of the crash.
Rescue boats searching the freezing Potomac River for survivors. Both aircraft plunged into the icy waterway that cuts through Washington, D.C. after colliding in midair. This footage from an EarthCam TV live stream captures the moment when the passenger plane and military helicopter hit and fell out of the sky. The American Airlines flight from Kansas was on its way to land at Ronald Reagan National Airport when the crash occurred. The U.S. Army said that its helicopter was on a training mission at the time. Divers are scouring the river for survivors. 64 people were on the plane and 3 on the helicopter, but officials said the conditions were extremely difficult.
The water that we're operating in is about 8 feet deep. There is wind, there is pieces of ice out there, so it's just dangerous and hard to work in. And because there's not a lot of lights, you're out there searching every square inch of space to see if you can find anybody. The divers are doing the same thing in the water. The water is dark, it is murky, and that is a very tough condition for them to dive in.
Investigations into how the collision happened in some of the most heavily monitored airspace in the world, just a few kilometers from the U.S. Capitol, are underway. President Trump has already taken to social media to criticize air traffic control for the crash, saying that it should have been prevented.
Let's pick up some of those points with journalist Matthew Capucci, who joins us from Washington, D.C. Welcome, Matthew. Let's start with that point about this being a busy airport, a military helicopter and a civilian passenger jet, which just absolutely a collision like this should not happen.
Yeah, most definitely. You know, this airspace is among the most busy and crowded in the world, but also the most heavily regulated. Reagan National Airport has about 25 million passengers fly through every single year. But notice, it's not a very big airport. Only 3 runways at any given point. 2 are in use at the same time for the most part. And yet they constantly churn through considerable volume. Most other major airports in the U.S. might have 3, 4, 5 runways. So they do a lot with a little space. Factor in the fact that it's only 3 kilometers south of downtown D.C. with the White House, the Capitol, the Washington Monument, just right over there. Lots of executive flights, the president flying in and out, lots of military exercises too. It's a lot to keep track of. And for years, folks have said maybe the airspace is a little bit too busy, maybe too many moving parts. It appears that may have been a factor tonight.
What is being said about potential causes?
Well, just to give folks a bit of a bearing, the Potomac River runs north to south. The main runway at Reagan National is 7,000 feet long. It also runs north to south. That's runway 1. That usually services the 3x3, 3-seat by 3-seat, bigger planes. However, smaller regional jets that are 2-seat by 2-seat sometimes use the shorter runways because they can. There is a shorter runway, number 33, that goes southeast to northwest. On nights like tonight, when the wind is blowing out of the northwest, pilots like to land that direction because it's better with lift as they start to land. Now, for that to occur, the planes have to sort of loop on the east side of the Potomac and then turn to the left at the last minute. That's what the plane did tonight. It was cleared to land on runway 33. However, per air traffic control, there was that military helicopter that was told to essentially wait, let the plane go by, then follow behind. The military helicopter acknowledged that it saw the plane, but the fact that the collision occurred indicates that perhaps the military aircraft was looking at the wrong plane or there was some sort of lapse of judgment.
This happened at night in the middle of winter, and the jet fell into a river, which sounds like a serious challenge for rescuers.
Most definitely. You know, the biggest factor that we ask all the time is to what extent did weather contribute to an accident like this? You know, meteorology and aviation oftentimes intersect. As y'all know, I'm your meteorologist. But, you know, I have to say tonight, the weather, at least for aviation, was great. Visibility was phenomenal. The winds were relatively light. So it doesn't seem like for the actual crash itself, that was a factor at all. However, now for the search and rescue and potentially recovery mission, It's a huge obstacle. Temperatures right now are down around 40 degrees Fahrenheit, probably 4 or 5 degrees Celsius, if that. Water temperatures are 35.8 degrees Fahrenheit, or roughly 2 degrees Celsius. So hypothermia would set in minutes. At the same time, there's ice that is actually propagating along the Potomac. And so the fact that this accident occurred roughly 8-ish hours ago would, to me, say that at this point, we're likely not really looking at a rescue mission. This is now a recovery mission. And so far, there have been no confirmed reports of survivors. It's difficult to not lose optimism.
And how will the investigation into this crash be handled?
Well, in the United States, we have something called the NTSB, the National Transportation Safety Bureau, that is tasked with reviewing all the data, all the angles, and trying to figure out what potential causes there were contributing to this accident. They're already on scene. They are sort of serendipitously located in D.C., and so they're basically already here. They'll be working in tandem with the FAA to interview both air traffic control and potentially eyewitnesses to combing through footage, and then, of course, the black boxes, the cockpit voice recorders, the data on board the plane. But really, I have sort of a sneaking suspicion that this investigation will sort of be a quicker one compared to other ones, simply because we know the passenger plane was cleared to land. It was doing what it was supposed to do. This looks like, on every count, an incursion or sort of a trip to where it wasn't supposed to be of this helicopter, a sort of, not following instructions or deviating from where it should have gone.
OK, thank you for talking us through that so clearly, Matthew. Journalist Matthew Capucci in Washington, D.C.
Thank you.